Hi everyone and welcome to Booxels, a podcast for the discerning gamer. Hello everyone and welcome back to Booxels. It is Booxels times, it's E3, and you've been showered with conference commentary from myself and Scott Johnson and Brian Dunaway and John Jagger. And today, I am very glad to be again with Scott to debrief the video game fiesta that is E3. How are you doing, sir?
Hello, everyone. It's Scott Johnson here. I'm doing great. I felt like the last few days were better because I had friends to hang out with while watching all of these conferences, where normally that's kind of a solitary affair. But because of some internet problems, there was a couple that I had to watch later or through alternate methods. And I'm very curious about those because we didn't get actually talk about those much.
Yeah, that's true. Thankfully, Brian jumped in and managed a bunch of technical stuff on those. And I just want to mention this. I mean, we've been doing this. This is the third year that we're doing this. And I ended up putting up the feeds, the commentary on the feed, not on the website, but basically those who wanted to listen to us be idiots as the conferences were happening could do that. And every time the feedback is so good. I would think, listening to us talking over games should be dumb. And really, I think it is, but people seem to like it.
Yeah, no, doesn't seem to be, I've yet to have any negative feedback. In fact, many years or the last 3 years, the feedback I get all year is I can't wait for E3 because I love when you guys do this. So apparently we're ringing the right bell and that makes us feel good. So thanks everybody for your support during that, your live showing up, your listenership after the fact. That's all awesome. And by the way, the ones that Patrick and I were able to do together, there are video versions of those also up at youtube.com/Scott Johnson if you are so inclined to want to watch that.
Yes, you should absolutely go check them out if you want to see our faces basically decompose of boredom in some of those conferences. That was. I mean, it's always a blast, as you said, to do it together, and it's a tradition now. Third time we're doing this joint task force of Boop and Booxels. So for those who don't know, for E3 for the past 3 years, we've commented on the conferences live with this year. Brian and John joined us for most of the conferences. They were here and there in the previous years. And we're having a lot of fun doing that. You can go listen to the previous episodes on the feed for Booxels. I don't know if you put them up on the Boop Show. Did you? The audio?
So the only one I didn't do is the PC gaming one because I haven't decided whether I want to do that or not.
You probably don't want to.
Yeah, it was real. I may have to do a disclaimer and maybe I'll still put it there. Yeah. But yes, all the other ones I always put audio up. This year we did video and who knows what next year will be. But yeah, it's been a complete blast. And if you guys haven't checked out all that content, it's all there waiting for you.
Yeah, and it's basically next year we're going to do it in VR. You'll be able to see us drool in anticipation or boredom.
Yeah.
Anyway, what we're doing for this episode, however, is go over each conference that we've seen. It's most of the major ones. I think only Devolver we didn't really get into because they do specific type of things. And we're going to go over each of them and tell you what we thought, how we understand what has been announced, what we think it means going forward. And we're not going to be doing it in chronological order because some of them really don't. I mean, it's better to save the exciting stuff for the latter part of the show. I think the way I was thinking of structuring it is really go over EA and PC gaming very quickly because there wasn't a huge amount of things to be discussed on those shows. So maybe let's start with EA.
Yeah, let's do that. They were first. May as well do them first.
Yeah, as chronological as possible with the bad stuff first. So
yeah.
EA, I feel bad calling them bad, but really it was the caricature of EA with it felt super scripted. It was like community marketing enthusiasm, and the production wasn't great. They were showing Frostbite, their game engine, their graphics engine, everywhere. They were using it for everything, and it looks really good. But overall, there was this part. It's always the case with EA, but the part with sports, and there was this Men in Blazers bit, which I didn't like. Maybe it's a thing that speaks to Americans, but it
doesn't to us. No, we don't care about that. Okay. I don't know why they made such a big deal out of that. That was weird.
But so, yeah, I think we're not going to be able to go over every game that was announced everywhere. So let's just take for each conference a couple of things that were exciting, or of note. Let's do it like that. I'll leave the one of them to you. I'll talk about there isn't much to talk about. Need for Speed Payback felt like the Fast and the Furious. I actually called it 3 Fast 4 Furious. Do you know why? Because 3 is lead for E, and 4 is it's the opposite. What?
You flipped it around.
Oh yeah, and 4 is lead for A, so it means EA 3-4 Fast and okay, it's dumb.
Yeah, no, we're getting old, is what you're saying. Yeah, that's what's happening here.
So that was fine.
I'll say this about Need for Speed real quick, because it was maybe the one I was most interested in. I want to hear your thoughts on Battlefront 2, because that looked great, but I have some questions. But for me, Need for Speed, surprisingly, I came out of that EA conference wanting that game more than anything else I'd seen at their conference, and I'm not exactly sure why, except I've got a long history with that game. I've liked many iterations of it. It's been spotty, but there have been times where they've just made incredible racing games. And that heist mode mission thing looked like my kind of deal. That looked like something I would want to do and do a lot of. So personally, I hope it's cheesy. I hope it's over the top. I hope the acting that I heard is just as bad throughout, because that makes it more fun for me. I want that to be an over the top Fast and the Furious style thing, where I'm stealing cars and, causing mayhem and trying to outrun cops. Like, that's very, very, very much up my alley when it comes to what I want out of a racing game. So big surprise for me out of their conference was I care about Need for Speed again.
Yeah. I think it was it seemed a little bit more cinematic and narrative than the previous one, which was like the super decked out neon drift cars game, which it felt more forced. The one from 2 years ago, I can't remember the name.
Sure. It was I bought that one and was very disappointed in it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But it was okay. It was okay. There was Battlefront 2, of course, which showed almost nothing of the single player campaign, which I think is not a great sign. I think it might be a 3-hour thing, possibly, but it's still a big multiplayer game, and the multiplayer is bigger, better, badder, as in badass. There was a Game Changers bit, which if this taught us anything, is don't put influencers in front of cameras. Although, I was talking about this part with some French friends yesterday, and they were telling me, we don't know these guys, but they have like 2 million followers, and they're gonna get their followers are gonna get super excited about the fact that they were there. So maybe it's, as you said, we're getting old. But holy crap, that game looks good.
It looks really, really good. Yeah. I mean, I liked the first one for how it looked and what it was bringing to the table in terms of Star Wars hype. And, it had come out at the same time as Episode 7. So there's just Star Wars everywhere, and that's all anybody could think about. But at the end of the day, the game was a little half-baked. It was a little low on content. All the guns sort of felt the same. It was like a weird arcade game almost. It was just not a lot there for $59. And it was a multiplayer-only game.
So you think this one will be more?
I think it will be $59 still, but I think this game
better.
Oh yeah, I do. From what I could gather, and again, we're only basing this on what we saw on screen, but it looks like the guns are more varied, that they have their more unique use cases. That's important for how a shooter feels. And I thought that the single player elements that we did see looked really compelling. Again, they didn't show a lot of it, so that either means they're not done, or they want to hold that stuff, or maybe it means it's short, like you suggested. If that's a 5 or 6 hour kind of Call of Duty style campaign length, then I'll be very happy. that would be fine with me. And that will hinge. My entire buying of that game hinges on whether or not that single player is any good. If that's no good, I'm not paying $60 for a multiplayer Star Wars shooter. I just won't do it.
Yeah, I think you won't be the only one for whom that's the case. The 30 minutes demo they showed was a little bit wonky. It felt like something they should have done after the conference ended. I think for these types of conferences, it has to be either pre-recorded or super tight. Like, they know how to script their speeches. They should have scripted their gameplay session just as much. And it felt a bit weird. But they did announce that it's going to have tons and tons of free content after the game is released. Actually, they said all post-launch content is going to be free. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but good on them.
Yeah, they did say, I mean, I think it left them a window open. If things go really well for them, it doesn't preclude them from having paid DLC down the road, but it's nice to hear that a lot of that stuff will just come to paying customers. I think that's good.
And then they also announced something I want to mention, which is the Seed division, basically the Search for Extraordinary Experiences division, which... Okay. I mean, it's good that they're...
It said during the show that it sounded like an acronym they had to find words to match, is what
Yeah, kind of. And it sounds like an acronym that a bad guys organization would be using in a video game, so maybe it's appropriate. But
sure.
There was a bunch of, sports stuff and A Way Out. We didn't mention A Way Out. That was actually really interesting.
That did look great. Maybe that was the bigger of the things they showed, perhaps the most surprising looking thing, or the one that seemed like, oh, okay, now we're into some new looking things. This isn't just sports games and shooter sequels. There's something special here, maybe.
So for those who don't know, it's a co-op game that you have to play co-op, and that is split screen. And you're always seeing what the other person is doing. Sometimes it takes up more or less of the screen, but you have to actually be playing with someone. You can play online or couch co-op, but you have to play with someone. And the really defining thing here is that you see what they're doing. You have the same screen and you're seeing both characters and their interactions. It's done by the developer that made Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which it's Hazelight Studio.
That's the new name. Yeah, it's incredible. By the way, Brothers is a really great game. We talked about it a bunch on that particular piece of content, but I cannot understate how much that thing stuck with me after I played it. It was a relatively short single-player experience, but I loved that. And the idea that they're bringing some of that to bear here in what looks like a much more advanced engine, a much more narrative experience with voice acting, and graphically things look a lot better. I'm very, very excited about what this game is. I mean, they're an independent developer. This will probably show up. Well, certainly it'll show up on Origin. Maybe even Steam, but whatever they're doing there looks real good to me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it was interesting for sure. We're not going to talk about Anthem because I think its place in the Microsoft conference, so we'll talk about that there. Overall, EA not incredible.
No, kind of. And I just want to say one more thing about the community stuff. When you have streamers and YouTubers on, it's fine. I understand the value in that. I understand that their followers are rabid and are very interested in what they do and where their faces show up. Those guys, I don't know when they got the script or if they were involved in any sort of planning, but they didn't seem to even, like, it was the first time they were reading teleprompters. That stuff really came off as hokey and junky, and I'm not sure I'm blaming them. I think maybe EA just poorly prepared or something. So anyway, that really left me feeling sour. I didn't like that at all.
It did feel a little bit, it wasn't well produced, and it felt like the teleprompters weren't working sometimes, or maybe they were late, or they were even with the execs of the company. So it happened. Sorry, it happens. It's big productions. Something can go wrong sometime, and it didn't completely crash and burn. It was just a little off. PC gaming, third year. The first year was unbearable. The second year was somewhat improved, and so it gave me hope that the third year would be okay. And it's put together by PC Gamer, which is a small magazine website company. It's not like they have the means of all of these other giant publishers. So you expect that it's not going to be as big, but it was really not good.
Yeah, it's bad. Third time was not the charm. Again, I want to state for the record, this is not Day9 / Sean Plott's fault. He's as good a host as any. He's fine. In fact, again, he's just getting bad material. It's a bad presentation. I'd hoped that with Intel sponsoring it this year, that meant we'd see an uptick in all of the things that might be good about such a thing. And instead, it was like the AMD one. It was some Intel commercials with a lot of talking about games that aren't necessarily on people's radar. I don't know. The whole thing just felt kind of empty and hollow. And it's too bad. It's unfortunate. There was the one part of it that stuck out is Cliffy B came on and threw some shade, I think, directly at EA and the Battlefront game by saying we're not going to release our multiplayer only shooter for $59 like some people, or whatever his exact quote was.
He basically cursed. He was like F that or something like that. It's like Cliffy B being edgy and being Cliffy B. It's
what he does, sure.
Fine.
Yeah, the earrings, it's what you do. You're an edgy guy. I get it. And he's got jeans on and he's, been around for a while. He can throw some shade, I suppose. But that was about the only point of like, oh, okay, we're getting heated up here that I felt during that entire presentation. It was all pretty...
Yeah, most publications haven't really been following the PC gaming one yet at this point, and I'm wondering if we're going to do it next year. I don't think I have it in me to do it 4 times in a row.
Yeah, they'd have to announce, oh, by the way, Valve's doing a new PC fight. Like if it's something like that, I'd get super into it, but I can't do it the way it is right now. No.
So it was a lot of games, like literally for the good half of it was footage we had seen the day before in other conferences, and they were kind of explaining stuff, but not really. And I don't even think PC gamers were happy with what was being shown. But there was a BattleTech game. There was Islands, which is like a weird exploration survival sandbox thing from Bohemia, which is the developer of Arma and DayZ and all of those. It's cheap, so it seems very ambitious. Like you can almost design your own games within the game, but it's $10 on pre-order. So I'm like, how ambitious can it be if it's $10? So, but maybe I'm giving it, unfair treatment. And there's Wargroove that was presented as well, which is basically Advanced War on PC. It looked nice enough.
That looked great. I do want to play that pretty bad. That looked awesome.
And so that was about it. That was notable, and even that wasn't that notable.
What's frustrating about it is that PC gaming is having a bit of a renaissance and has been for a few years now. And it's frustrating that E3 cannot figure out a way to properly showcase PC stuff in the bright limelight. And maybe at the end of the day, it doesn't need to, since it's a non-owned platform. Whereas Xbox is Microsoft, Sony or PlayStation is Sony, and Switch is Nintendo. It makes sense that those guys have to put their best visual foot forward and their best production forward at an event like this. Whereas nobody owns PC stuff. That's part of the power of the PC world, is that we're all in it and everybody can make stuff and mods and bit. So maybe it doesn't even need this thing, but it's just unfortunate that it was so lousy given what a great place the PC is right now as a platform. I don't know.
Well, they're really, they're between a rock, a hard place, and like a bath of acid. It's like any big game is going to be showcased at one of the big publisher conferences. A smallish game, if it's good enough, then it's going to be picked up and shown as, trotted out as, look, we do indie as well. So you're left with kind of weird in the middle thing. And at E3, I don't know. Maybe it would be worth moving it to a different time. Maybe not in the middle of E3, but...
Yeah, have a focus some other time of the year. There's lots of other cool conferences. I think that's a great idea. Or just don't do it at all. If you're not going to do well, just don't freaking do it.
Yeah, I don't know that it serves PC gamer all that much. So.
No. Well, it certainly doesn't serve us as PC gamers, so I don't know who it's serving. It seemed like maybe Intel thought it might serve them, but I don't know how that helps them. That just came off as a commercial, and I don't know. Lame.
All right, Bethesda had a pretty. We're getting into the cool stuff now. They had a really weird, fun way of putting it together. And by the way, I think the way of presenting things that Sony introduced last year at E3 and at their PlayStation experience, which is basically minimize the amount of time people are talking on stage and show game videos from your games nonstop, has permeated into the entirety of the industry, except for EA. They didn't get the memo. They were like, "Oh, what? We woke up yesterday. We have to put a thing together. What's happening?"
Yeah, isn't that crazy? EA went the total, like it's 10 years ago for them. Is how that felt. Everybody else did the Sony thing this year. Even Microsoft, to a point, they were a little more stagey, but
a bit.
But yeah, like that's the new thing. I think they're like Apple and tech conferences. They kind of did a thing, and now everybody's like, "Well, we'll do that too." And even Nintendo stuff, they've been doing direct for longer than this format, but it's kind of that same thing. I'm fine with it, 100% fine with it. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's a different, it's kind of a leap to do a Nintendo Direct type thing, which the Sony shows kind of were last year, but on stage, because it's kind of a weird disconnect that you're not going to use the stage if you have it.
Right.
But so Bethesda kind of did the same thing here, framed in the context of that Bethesda land, which was actually a theme park with different sections that represented the different games. And what we didn't realize when we were watching it is that not the booth, but like the stage and the surroundings of the stage were actually Bethesda land. Like they had a fair type of animations and stands and booths and stuff like that, so which was kind of weird and fun. But yeah, there were a few interesting things in the beginning. Push in VR, they announced and showed Doom VR and Fallout 4 VR. I'm not sure if it's Vive only, but they showed it with the Vive. A few other things, Skyrim on Switch, which is not the special edition. It's like 6 years old Skyrim, which it's on Switch, and it has some Link character and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you can it's Link armor, but you can also take out the controllers and do motion control for weapons and
who's going to do that?
Nobody is, but that's the one difference. Honestly, it's straight up Skyrim again. They're going to put Skyrim on everything before we all die. One thing about the Doom one is these Fallout VR, 4 VR, and Doom VR. Doom VR is actually called Doom VR FR, which I assume is virtual reality. Virtual F reality. Yeah, or effing or something. It's got to be like.
Yeah, I think so.
Be like them being funny. But I had a question that no one's been able to answer for me. Are all of those VRifications of those games? That's not to existing games. So these are new standalone products that I need to buy.
I think so. Yeah.
See, I don't like that with the Fallout 4 VR thing when they first talked about it.
Oh, maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. But
I don't know either, and I need to know. I feel like they didn't ever get that question answered very well. Maybe it's been posted somewhere since, but I haven't seen it.
It will. It probably has been answered. We just, we're still in the middle of the entire thing, so we don't know for sure. But it looked interesting because it did look like they have been working on the motion and right amount of movement for you and for the enemies, and especially in Doom, it's like almost not really a rail shooter, but you're moving around and enemies are here and there and you have to shoot them, which is what you do in Doom. But it's weird because in Doom, the reboot from last year, movement is so fast. But I was intrigued. I think they're starting to get into a mode where they understand what they can and can't do with VR. So I think this was a positive overall.
No, I totally agree. I just don't want to pay $59 for each of those games again.
They won't. I don't think they will be $59. I really don't think so.
You don't? You think? What do you think they'll end up like? 29, something like
29, 39, maybe something like that. Yeah. But,
see, and so asking a lot for people who spent premium money on both those games at launch to go out and get new versions of them.
Maybe they will give it away to people who have, bought all the DLC and stuff like that. But
maybe they did that with the enhanced edition of Skyrim. So
exactly,
maybe they would. That's a good point.
They also announced that they are going to be selling mod content with the what's it called, Creation Club for Skyrim and Fallout 4. So there was the big kerfuffle, what was it, 2 years ago or last year, with that thing, and they're gonna be doing it, and they didn't, no one complained this time. No. So I think it's fine.
It's totally fine, and it's consoles as well. So it's more inclusive, not just PCs and stuff. So the fact that they keep supporting that stuff is great. I mean, Skyrim, as much as we joke about them just shoving it on new platforms now, weirdly, for a game that came out in 2011, that thing sure had long life. Like, just doesn't seem to age, doesn't seem to get old. It's considered by many to be one of the greatest games ever made.
It is getting old.
Yes, it is getting old. However, games usually don't hold up that long. Like, especially in a modern sense, they don't have the staying power. And part of the reason that game has is it's an exceptionally vibrant mod community. So it's nice to see, I guess, them support that, even though Steam sort of already did. I don't know. There's still some controversy there, but it's good.
What else? I wanted to say something about this, but I guess I'm not going to because I forgot.
Elder Scrolls by the way, Elder Scrolls the game, the online game, ESO. There's not much to say about it except they talked about Morrowind and it doing well and blah blah blah, and that's great. 10 million players have been playing it, blah blah blah. That's all wonderful. I just wanted to put in this small note that I have been playing that game before Morrowind and now currently, and I'm totally hooked on it. I don't know what's happening, but there's some special sauce in that game now. I don't know when it happened or what happened, but ESO, quality product. Cool. Hell of an MMO, real good. So there's that.
There's an expansion for Dishonored 2. There's a promo for Quake Champions. It's like they made it look super duper esports. Almost everyone had their "we're doing esports" moment, and that was it for them. It makes sense. The Evil Within 2. Now we're getting to the good stuff. The Evil Within 2 was announced for October 13, 2017. And I didn't play Evil Within 1, but that looked freaking weird.
Yeah,
and real freaking weird. Scary.
I want to get rebirthed in a vat of milk or whatever that is. There's some weird stuff, weird visuals in there. I didn't play the first one either. I get these confused, honestly. There's a series of survival horror games where I'm just like, which one's that one?
Is it Until Dawn or which one? What?
Yeah, it gets real confusing, but it did look real nice and it's pretty scary. And I don't like scary games, so whether I'll play it or not depends on whether someone,
That's kind of my issue with it. I'm a wuss. That's my problem.
Yeah.
I did really like what I entitled Wolfenstein Super Nazi Steampunk Apocalypse America. I think that's an appropriate.
I like your title. It's better than Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, honestly.
Which is the actual title. Coming out October 27, by the way. Everything they talked about is coming out this year. Like it was the formula for last year. We're announcing it. It's coming out. And that was so they are probably working on a bunch of stuff for 2018, but we're everything they talked about is available soon.
And that means no Todd Howard this year at all.
Which was a bit sad.
It is a little sad. You always like to see the face of the company. In my opinion, he is more than Pete Hines. But Todd Howard coming out and talking about whatever their next IP is that supposedly him and his team are working on, got none of that. But I do think it's in keeping with what you just said. I think Bethesda likes this conference to be a thing where this year is the focus. And that's a pretty strong year. Like, there's quality additional content coming out for already successful games. Skyrim on Switch, which is, at least a Switch thing. And then this Wolfenstein game looks amazing.
It does. It
really
really does.
I cannot wait to play that thing. It looks funny. It looks crazy. It looks like maybe they've taken some of what they learned from Doom and put it in that world in terms of its speed and combat. Everything about it looks great. That's on my top 3 probably games I'm most looking forward to this year.
And it looked really good. It looked good, and there were. It felt like, I don't know if I played a little bit of Wolfenstein, the reboot. And I enjoyed it, but it's another one of those things where you have a million things going on at the same time. Sure. But this one seemed like it was a little bit more rounded. And for those who haven't seen it, it's basically, as we said, Nazis have won the war and they're in America. And it's been done a million times, but the way they've done this one felt extra compelling. You know, there was this weird Heidi in the prairie walking around, and then she was calling a lassie kind of dog, like super American from the 60s, 70s, but the dog was a weird demon robot dog that was breathing fire, and there were people walking in the street and going like, don't forget your German lesson, and the Ku Klux Klan people walking around shaking hands, and then there was some narrative portions of it, and towards the end you had like this the I think it's the wife or girlfriend of the hero who's like pregnant, but like pregnant and she's going on a mission with another person at one point because they have to, and she's a badass. She like stabs a Nazi 15 times in the chest, and then there was this other portion, like in the same scene, a guy before going into the action moment drops acid, and he's seeing like this weird cartoony rainbow chameleon, and there was like, it was charming, beautiful, enthusiastic, like it was and of course, you know, actiony and great game.
Bloody, gory. It looks great. It's what I want out of Wolfenstein. It was always such a stupid idea in the first place that you can only go this way. I mean, let us not forget, in the very first Castle Wolfenstein game back in 1991 or whatever it was, the final boss was Mecha Hitler. It was Hitler with big Gatling guns implanted in himself, and him and Goering, whoever had this idea to make him a half robot. And, you know, that's what you want. And that's, I think, what we're getting. But a lot more story and some really great acting. Like, it really left an impression on me. So
it feels
surprised that one.
Yeah, it feels like the tendency that we have in some developers, that they're growing up and they're making games that are respectful of the original material, but not, you know, dumb. Like they're not doing it identical to the point that it's a little bit silly, which I think Microsoft could learn something from on their first party developers. But
I agree 100%. And I wish, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. Let's go over to Ubisoft, which had a super strong showing. They also had a kind of we're just going to show you and not talk too much about it. They talked a little bit, but there were a number of interesting things. The first surprise was Miyamoto coming on stage to show the thing that was leaked, you know, a million times, Mario plus Raving Rabbids. And it was surprising. It's basically, I mean, there was a super emotional moment where Miyamoto was praising the creator of the game. I'm sorry, I don't have his name, but it was like he was he was almost crying.
Imagine how that must feel when the Lord of all video games is up there complimenting you from a stage.
Yeah,
still acting like he's the most excited kid in the room, yet he's, 60-something-year-old Miyamoto. It's amazing. That was a great moment, actually. That entire conference, what a turnaround from last year. I loved this format. I thought everything about that conference was great, but
it was
details.
It was emotional, and we, of course, we have to mention the context of Vivendi inching closer and closer towards a hostile takeover of Ubisoft, and it is, it feels like, those giant snakes that eat their prey slowly and that they're swallowing it and it's inexorable.
Yeah.
That's what's happening to Ubisoft, and we don't know if they're going to be able to get away from it.
Yeah.
So there's a weird mood to everything they're doing. But yeah, so the Raving Rabbids unexpectedly is basically XCOM for everyone. That was surprising.
I am so excited about that game. I cannot wait to get that on the Switch. I think that's a brilliant platform for it. I think the crossover is really funny. I think that the gameplay is one of my favorite kinds of things. I love turn-based tactical gameplay. It's like they're giving me a gift here, and I'm super jazzed to play that game. I can't wait.
Yeah, it looks really good. I'm not into these kinds of games, but I was intrigued. Yeah. They also showed Assassin's Creed, which I think we can talk about here. It was showed at the Microsoft conference as well, but it's of course Assassin's Creed's Origins. It has Egypt and lots of free roaming, open world, even more open than, obviously, it's Egypt, so it's very spread. You don't have like one big city. It's a lot of smaller structures that you go to, and it feels like I might have been expecting or wanting too much from the next Assassin's Creed game, given that they skipped a year. It definitely feels like they've skipped a year, but it doesn't feel like they have enhanced it to the point that I would be excited about Assassin's Creed if I hadn't been before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, the year off helped, right? Like them going back and saying, all right, we're going to work real hard on what's next. Syndicate was awesome. I think Syndicate redeemed a lot of problems that we had with the French one.
I liked, Unity. I really liked it. It's the only one I finished.
So, oh wow, really? That's crazy.
Yeah. No, I really liked it. I thought it was, it is what it is. It's Assassin's Creed, but
right.
But I liked
a lot of people gave that one heat for
it was buggy at first, but I played it a couple of months after it came out. So,
but I count myself as an Assassin's Creed fan, and I'm also a enormous nerd and fan of anything historical ancient Egypt. I freaking love that whole setting, the deserts, the pyramids, the gods and the everything. The mythology of that period is amazing to me, and I watch anything that features any of that stuff. So total no-brainer for me to play this version of the game, and it looked great. They're talking about gameplay advancements that make it seem different enough to make it so it's not just another Assassin's Creed game. The bird mechanic is really cool.
You mean the ancient biological drone?
Yeah, that's the one, the biodrome that's made out of feathers and meat.
Right.
But I love everything about the setting, and I love their energy. And I think that guy, the game runner, I've never seen a more sincere presentation from anyone. Seems really interested in making this count. So yeah, I'm 1,000% behind a new Assassin's Creed. I'm very, very much looking forward to playing it.
The Crew 2 has like boats and planes and all sorts of weird stuff. The Fractured Butthole. Stop me when you want to say something.
No, I'm just glad you said Fractured Butthole and then paused and then said something to me, because it sounded like you, out of context, that was a really weird thing to hear you say. But go ahead.
October 17, the Fractured Butthole will be available. Will be there. Will be fractured.
Fractured, but it'll be whole. It'll be fine.
Yeah, of course. Transference is a weird VR something, I think, with Elijah Wood with a lot of FMV. It's coming spring 2018. I'm mentioning it because it's VR, and we didn't get a lot of VR, but we did get some. So, I mean, I think it's VR. It was weird.
I think it's VR. It made no sense to me. I still not entirely sure what the hell I was looking at there. I don't know what that is.
Half horror, half super meta, with Elijah Wood saying he works at Ubisoft and that they are, they found out something about. It's like, I don't know. It was weird, but intriguing.
Very odd. I mean, I am intrigued. I don't know that I'm pre-order intrigued, but I want to see what's up.
No one knows what it is.
Yeah.
Skull and Bones is a pirate game, which is basically an expansion, an entire game expanded from the ship-to-ship combat in naval combat in Assassin's Creed Black Flag. That's what it felt like. There's a number of pirate.
I know we'll get to this in the Microsoft conference. I just want to make the statement here. This is the best pirate game currently on display at E3, not that other one.
That's what I was going to say. There are a lot of pirate games. Apparently, it's a thing now. And apparently, another thing is to make a pirate game and not be able to explain what you actually do in that game. We're talking about Sea of Thieves, of course. But this one, actually, I mean, it's not for me, but it felt like what you're going to do, and there's some PvP elements, and you're like controlling the ship, and there's some naval maneuvers, and like if you're into this kind of thing, it's going to be your jam. Coming out fall 2018.
Huh? Yeah. The black flag. Ooh, almost slipped the tongue there.
That was don't forget the L.
That game is one of my favorites in the Assassin's Creed series. I loved it. And part of what I loved is I thought that stuff was handled really well. You didn't feel like you had to be kind of genius to do that naval combat. But
do you want to play a full game out of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, heck yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if it's focused. I mean, this is why I liked it. There was a focus to this. Yeah. It's naval combat, straight up. Let's go. There's strategy to that. There's teamwork in that. There's all kinds of things you could come up with to make that compelling. Whereas the thing Rare's working on, I don't know what the focus of that was, and I think the lack of focus is what made me not like that, at least at this stage. So anyway, yeah, the focus is good. Pirates are cool. Blowing stuff up is even cooler, and the graphics great. Like, yeah, I'm all in on that, whatever that is.
And it did feel like very kinetic. The impacts were terrible. You felt like you were at sea, kind of doing it, and that it was a good thing for what it was.
Yep.
South Park phone game. There's no reason they shouldn't keep pulling that thread if they can make money out of it. That's a weird one that came out of nowhere, or maybe left field, as the expression goes. Starlink Battle for Atlas, which is a cross-platform game, Switch included, which is basically a Toys to Life thing where you have kind of Lego ships that you attach to your controller, and it's a massive universe that you can explore, and there's ship-to-ship combat. And at the same time, it feels like the little bit we've seen of feels like No Man's Sky with, again, focus and something that you can actually do in the game. And at the same time, it feels like Ubisoft didn't get the memo that Toys to Life aren't really, a thing anymore. But maybe this can be successful because it's different enough. And still, I don't know what to think of that game, but it looked interesting.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, Nintendo defies this because the amiibo stuff is, as collectibles, are extremely popular. Very hard to get the rare ones. Like, it's a big moneymaker for them, as opposed to Disney Infinity and, to some extent, Skylanders. But I am not, and I repeat, not going to put assembled ship things on my controllers. I'm not doing it. It's weird. It's not going to work for me. I understand the thinking. You don't have to have a base. There's not just an NFC chip hidden underneath the thing like you do with the Switch or whatever. It's like attached, and it's kind of cool if I was 13 or something, but there's no way. I want to play a ship-to-ship combat space game with exploration and check out the Atlas system, and that all sounds great, but I don't want to do it with a toy hanging off my controller.
We don't know how much the toy is necessary. It might be that it's not absolutely necessary, but it didn't look like that.
Maybe. I mean, the problem with Toys to Life is, I don't know, it's got like one trick, and that trick is, when you put the deal here, something happens. Ooh. And then once you realize that, like, I had a friend, this isn't exactly legal, but I have a friend that came over to the house, and he had a handful of what looked like a ton of miniature poker chips, is what I thought they were. Tiny little red wafers that look like tiny poker chips. And I said, what the heck are those? He goes, these are all the amiibos. And I said, what? He goes, yeah, you just buy these empty NFC chips and you can earn your own. And so he doesn't have a single amiibo. He's just got all these chips. It's like seeing how the sausage is made, kind of. And you're just like, yeah, that's all these are. Yeah, a little bit. I still like the figures. I've got some right here, but I don't think that. I mean, yeah, getting into this it seems a little late. First of all, and second of all, expecting people to hang a toy on your controller is a lot to ask. So
a steep expansion called Road to the Olympics is going to be doing Olympic stuff. It feels like they got a deal with the Olympics and they wanted to find a place for it, and Steep was there, and it's still being played, contrary to what many people might think. There's a community there that likes it, and so they were like, all right, we'll put it there, and it's probably a good place for that specific thing. And then the two biggest things I thought... Far Cry 5, wow, that looked good.
Yeah, that looks really good. I mean, I don't know what it is. We may get in there and go, oh, this is like all the Far Cry games, and I don't want to grind out my ammo pouch for the next 3 hours. You know, like it may be the things about Far Cry that I don't like. I don't know, but from what they're showing so far, very compelled. The team play aspect, both the cooperative and the NPC aspects of a sniper up here and you're on the ground, and that's just all very cool. Like they're going to have to really blow it to disappoint me, because right now I'm pretty hyped on that game.
And the setting, I mean, we've talked about it before, but that Montana setting with it feels like there's some emotional strings to be tugged. And at the same time, the Far Cry, I don't know, it felt more visceral, and it was super violent, and it drew you in, I think, more than the other the previous Far Cry games did. It felt like, maybe that's not going to be the case, but the previous Far Cries had great cinematic moments that felt like they were sandwiched between regular go get the camp, what's the name of the things, the base, right, and keep doing that. Here, It felt like it was a more integral part of the story and the experience. Like the journey the character is taking felt like it was weaved into the action as well. So
yeah,
I don't know.
It's either like if it ends up being just climb the tower, explore the new areas, go rub out those missions, do the same thing over again, I will not be thrilled. But if this story is nice and focused, that's a very ripe storyline to play with. I think, it feels like a more personal story this time around, unless I'm a nameless, faceless guy running in the wilderness in a land I don't know. Like the previous games are so fish out of water. This one's like fish in the water, but the water's gone bad. And I like that.
Yeah, I think it's an appropriate description.
Sure.
And finally, Beyond Good and Evil 2 CG trailer was shown, and that was mind-blowing. I mean, CG trailers often, I was going to say always, but if you put enough money and expertise into it, it's going to look good no matter what. But the artistic vision of that thing was, I never played Beyond Good and Evil 1, so that for me it was very fresh, and it was like, there are a few moments, in culture, a few moments a year, if you're lucky, when you're like, I've never seen anything like this before. It just feels different and weird and wonderful. And this was that for me, to an extent that I did not expect. I'll say a few other things about it, but yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say I don't know how to put this. This is a game that's been in development hell for a long time. Famously, it's one of those games. And the original outing was PS2 and GameCube, I think. And they've, been back and forth on, it's coming out. And every year there's rumors, Beyond Good and Evil 2, we're totally going to get announced. And then it doesn't happen. And then one year, like 5 years ago or something, they showed a trailer, like a teaser for it. And it was another CGI thing, but it was a lot less involved than this one. But it was enough to everybody all freak out again. Oh, they're working on it. And then silence, nothing, like zip. And then they came out with this one. And after the trailer, which was very impressive, like Patrick says, and much more involved, again, a CG trailer, so, no gameplay or anything, but out comes the two people running the project, and they acted like they were receiving a Tony Award or something. And I kept going, wait a minute, you guys are what are we congratulating you on yet? Because all you've done is the same thing you did 5 years ago so far, which is show a trailer. There's no game yet. So I'm a little worried that this is much ado about nothing, or this could just be another Duke Nukem problem, or I don't know. But I would really like to have seen some progress in an actual game, and that would have been enough for me to, be more excited than I am. But right now I'm like, awesome trailer, huge potential. Where's your game?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And there was this weird, like, join the Space Monkey program, we need your help. And I was like, wait, so you're kickstarting this? What is happening now? Like, what do you need our help for? Is this beta testing it wasn't clear. And I think, or maybe I want to believe that it was so emotional, maybe for a couple of reasons. One might be that they're actually ready to present it soonish. in which case it's weird that they didn't show any gameplay at all, but okay. And the other thing is the looming Vivendi might threaten the whole project. So maybe they wanted to show it to make it a strategic, push to maybe get the trust of their stake shareholders, or maybe push the price of the action stock higher to make it more expensive for Vivendi to keep buying it. I don't know. There must have been something we didn't know under all of it. But
definitely felt they were so hands on deck for this presentation. It just felt like everybody's firing on all cylinders. That Ubisoft is in a really great place creatively, and I had that impression through the entire thing. And to know this Vivendi thing is looming over them like this is a bummer, man.
Yeah.
The best conference, probably the best conference of the entire E3. And the whole time I'm thinking, yeah, but you guys are all about to possibly get screwed here.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not Vivendi doesn't have a history of nurturing their, creative and artistic talents. So that's why everyone's freaking out. But that, the people at Vivendi were like, well, maybe you should stop crying. This is what happens when you go public. That's the game you're playing, and we might be trying to buy you. They're not, officially saying it, but might be trying to buy you. But that's how the system works. So, still, I mean, anyway, Beyond Good and Evil 2, it got me stoked, and I might forget about it because they don't speak about it again for 3 years. But that vision was enthusiastic for me.
Totally agree. Looked really good.
And now we get to Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo. First, Microsoft, though. The official announcement and unveiling of the Xbox One X Extreme X. 6 teraflops, true 4K. They were really adamant that it was really 4K. $499 release November 7. And I think we can talk about Anthem at the same time, which is that BioWare game that is going to be releasing in 2018, because it was sort of made to be the poster child for the power of the Xbox One X. Mm-hmm. And holy crap, did it look good. It looked really good. Like I was loving it. And as I was watching it, beyond the fact that the game looks like it could be really interesting, I think it's really the one showing where everyone is absolutely certain that it will not run like this on PlayStation 4 Pro at all. Like that's not how it's going to run on that.
I don't know. Like I bought into that until later on. I saw some things happening in the PlayStation presentation and went, I think this looks just as good as what I saw in the other thing. A little bit. I mean, I know they're different games, but I'm not 100% sold on this idea that it's so drastically better. And I think if I'm to predict what will pan out with this thing when it's launched, is you'll have teardowns and reviews and things that do like pixel comparisons, and resolution may be an issue, but in terms of like fidelity and effects and that sort of stuff, I don't know that the Xbox One X is going to completely trounce the PlayStation 4, and certainly
even from a hardware perspective, or maybe the implementation of the software on that, because from a hardware perspective, there's no question it is more powerful, like significantly more powerful.
Yeah, the specifications are definitely there. There's no question, but we're also at a point of diminishing return, so it's easier to sort of get away with less. PCs we'll keep the PC conversation out of it because they'll always have a leg up because there's always some new card or whatever. So that I'm not going to count here. But in the case of Sony, the stuff they were showing fidelity wise was blowing my mind as much as what I was seeing from the BioWare game. Now the BioWare game was doing things that were volumetric and insanely incredible amounts of depth and things that maybe will look better on that device. But here's my worry. It's a multi-platform game. They're going to base their code base on the machine that's selling the most copies of their game. And in other words, optimization always happens for the lead platform. In this case, it'll be a Sony platform, and they may tweak it and uptick it, or just pure 4K resolution will be enough to set it over the top. Maybe it's a few extra frames per second. I don't know. The Xbox will certainly have its advantage. But here we have, again, a third-party game that looks insane, that will be everywhere, and is not necessarily enough to compel people to spend $500 on a new console.
I think you're touching on the issue of that conference as a whole, which was a good conference. But what bothered me was there was a couple of things. You know what? Let's talk about the games first, and then we can get into what we thought. Metro Exodus, a new episode of Metro, which looked really good as well, kind of creepy, as Metro usually is.
They actually led with that, right? That was the first game out of the game.
Yeah. Assassin's Creed Origins looked okay. It looked good. It didn't look as mind-blowing as Anthem or Metro. PUBG is coming to Xbox. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which I'm not sure it's for the console world, but maybe.
There's money to be made. It will be a big enough hit that they'll make more money. It'll do fine. It won't. It's not. I don't know that it's a conference worthy thing outside of saying, hey, we're also still really into these more independent developers.
Well, it's so hot right now. PUBG.
Yeah, it's huge on PC. That thing's a monster.
You were really impressed by State of Decay 2.
Yeah, so
coming.
Part of the reason I'm impressed is, I mean, it looked good. It didn't look great, but it looked good visually. But State of Decay 1 is underrated as a GTA like set in an apocalyptic setting. It's incredible how much they did with the previous State of Decay, which was originally released as a live arcade release in the summer. It came out on Xbox 360 and kind of a little rough around the edges, pretty ugly. There's now an upscaled version on Steam that looks a lot better. But if you could get past the ugly bits, it is a really good. It's basically GTA, but in a zombie apocalypse. And I know people are sick of zombies or whatever, but it was done really well. And you have cars, and you're in the city, and the city expands outward as you gain more ground, and you have to scavenge for goods. And it really scratched an itch for me. And I am automatically excited about State of Decay 2, although I'll probably end up with a PC version of that. But it did look real good to me. I played better with a mouse and keyboard is the main reason I say that. But yeah, State of Decay 2, awesome game. I'm impressed mainly because I'm looking at the pedigree, and I think that was an unsung hero of that generation. It looked weird. If you don't like zombies, you weren't interested. I don't know that it ever got its due, but I thought it was great.
Yeah. And we're going to get back to the Xbox One X as what it's worth, how it impacts everything. But I think it's worth going through the games that were introduced because it's intimately linked. I didn't mention, I skipped over Forza Motorsport 7, which has a partnership with Porsche, as you guys say it, which it looked really good as sports car games do. I mean, Forza owns the car racing market. It is
without question. Those guys over at Sony have screwed up with what they did with Gran Turismo. They've let it languish too long. They've messed that up.
And it was like a new, better, cooler looking version of Forza. So that was. Minecraft is going to be crossplay and has 4K graphics. Okay. Minecraft isn't my jam, but I mean, it's huge. So,
Sure.
The Dragon Ball Fighter Z had to me the effect that State of Decay 2 had for you. It's a very personal, emotional thing, I think, but I grew up on Dragon Ball, and seeing the incredible graphical prowess that game is showcasing was. My mind was exploding as we were watching it.
It looked like you were playing the anime series. It's pretty. I was impressed with what was happening there. It's like a game I'll never play, but I was blown away. It reminded me kind of like what South Park did, and to some degree that Cuphead thing is doing, where they replicate a medium that is
art style. Yeah,
yeah, where it doesn't feel like you're playing video games. These aren't polygons. These These aren't sprites, and in 4K and higher resolutions, this stuff is even more seamless. So it's like you're playing your childhood cartoon in real time, and that's very impressive. Yeah.
There was also The Last Night, which is a weird pixelated post-apocalyptic Paris thing. It's a launch exclusive. We're going to talk about this again, but there were a number of launch exclusive titles for the Xbox One X, a number of Xbox One X, I'm sorry, for the Xbox One, a number of Xbox One X enhanced, I can't remember what the terminology is, but basically improved for the added power of the Xbox One X. Of course, I didn't mention it, but it is, both consoles are compatible, so any game will run on both devices. There's backwards compatibility with Xbox games, original, like the OG Xbox games. Is going to be running Xbox One games faster, better, improved in many ways. So I'm sorry, I'm getting all over the place, but I keep forgetting.
Well, there was a lot in that thing to cover. I mean, the idea being, for example, if you pick up The Last Night, which is where we were, this weird pixelated thing. The idea is that you can run it on any number of the Xbox family consoles from Xbox One forward, and it will look great on, well, hopefully it looks good on an Xbox One, looks maybe a little better on an S because the S has got HDR or upscale, whatever, and even better on an X because whatever the X is doing. So
yeah, that's probably not the best game to take as an example.
Not.
But yeah.
I think this thing's going to look good no matter what it's on. It's not a platform exclusive; it's a launch exclusive, so you'll get it everywhere else at some point. Which I'm just only saying to keep illustrating the fact that they had very few actual exclusives, which
that's
really
the issue. Basically, the only two exclusive they were Forza Motorsports and Crackdown 3.
Yep.
And that really is it. So Cuphead has a release date, September 29, finally. There are a ton of PC games that are coming to the Xbox. Life is Strange Before the Storm was showcased there, but again, it's a cross-platform game. Shadow of War gameplay was showcased as well. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is another one of those that blew my mind, and that's an exclusive. But I mean, in the same sense that Ori and the Blind Forest was an exclusive, but Ori and the Blind Forest. It was timed
exclusive though, right? Because can't you get Ori on PlayStation now? I think.
Can you? No, I don't think so.
Maybe you're right. Well, I guess since I get it on Steam.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, that feels like not an exclusive, but I guess in console terms it is.
Yeah, it is. It is an exclusive. I mean, yeah, it's is it a first party thing? No, it's Moon Studios.
No, they're all ex-Blizzard people, but they made some deal with Microsoft, I
think. And so this is another one of the exclusives. You have Crackdown 3, which I think was a little bit underwhelming. I'm not a Crackdown person, but what did you think? You liked the first one.
I liked the first Crackdown. I was completely underwhelmed by Crackdown 3. I don't think it looked very good. I think the characters were hanky-janky looking. I think we've gone beyond what that game brought to open world games, sandbox games. I was the least impressed with that game of everything they showed. Considering it's their only major platform exclusive, that's not even, as far as I know, coming to PC. Oh yeah, and Forza, I forgot about that. But Forza will be on PC as well, I think, didn't they say? Well, anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah, Forza will be on PC.
Yeah, but Crackdown 3 should have been a huge, big, fat deal, and it just came off as, I don't know, I felt like, hey, it's 2001, everybody, get your Xbox. It just didn't feel right, and I'm not impressed, and I wish I was. I hate saying this because I really wanted Microsoft to have the strongest possible showing this time. It's good for the industry for them to be in that place, and Crackdown 3 did not do it for me.
So I think if listeners haven't picked up on it yet, we're kind of down on the Microsoft conference, which I think is at odds with a lot of people's reactions I've seen on the net. A lot of people really liked it, and it might be because we're coming at it from a different place. I've heard a lot of people saying that they liked the Microsoft conference, that they liked it as a huge showing of lots of games that they may or may not play on their Microsoft console. Probably they're going to play on PC. And the way I'm looking at it personally is I'm trying to understand if that conference and that introduction of the Xbox One X was going to reverse the dynamic that has been installed since the launch of this generation, where Sony is significantly outselling Microsoft. And basically, if it's going to challenge the domination of the PlayStation 4, in the way, if you remember, that when the PlayStation 3 came out, it was a huge misstep for Sony, and Microsoft ruled the beginning of the previous generation, but Sony sort of managed to do a comeback, and by the end, it was kind of, even. They both had, in different markets, a roughly equivalent market share if you took it, globally. Sure. And I think when you look at it that way, I've seen a lot of people say, oh, but of course it's not going to inverse the dynamic. It's too far gone already. And the Xbox One, just like the PlayStation 4 Pro, is a premium product. I think they insisted on that fact a number of times. They said, we're not going to sell it to everyone. The main product is still the Xbox One S. And this one, we've heard from Sony that they're selling 1 in 5 PlayStation 4s is a Pro. So it's not like it's becoming the majority of the installed base. And the Xbox One X is not going to be anything different. It's a more powerful version, premium product for people who really want a powerful machine. And so the disappointment, I think, that personally I'm feeling is that I'm seeing a showing where they focused on hardware, but they didn't get that what makes a success for a console is the exclusives. It's the first party stuff. It's the things that you can get there, even if it's on PC as well, but they have no first party thing. And we kept seeing over the past year and a half projects being canceled. And I thought maybe that's because they're working on something else that is going to be, setting the record straight. And it seems like that's not the case. It's just business as usual.
They cut back. I mean, they literally cut back. They cut back on not only projects, but entire divisions. They had a whole division whose job it was to make interactive game stuff. If you remember right, it was like some TV crossover thing. The one game that they were going to show it off was that Quantum Break.
Yeah, Quantum Break.
Yeah, and now that entire division dissolved, gone, out of there, not there anymore. They no longer have people in there. You said yesterday you don't think Satya Nadella and the current leadership of Microsoft cares about Xbox in the way that previous leaderships have. And I followed up with this comment, and I'll stick by it. And I've since had some people chime in and say they think this is exactly right, so take it for what you want. But Microsoft's brand is not Xbox. It is a brand under the umbrella of Microsoft. More important to them these days are things like Azure, Office 365, other consumer products, their new hardware division for notebooks and laptops and computers, blah, blah, blah. That's what matters to Microsoft. Their services and hardware divisions is what matters. Xbox is a thing they do, but it's not their main thing they do. For Sony, again, for good or ill, has had a reverse trajectory. Their main brand and product now is PlayStation. Everything else takes a back seat. That includes their electronics, television, all that division, their literal television and film division. All of it is backseat to PlayStation. PlayStation is the brand of Sony. So which company is throwing the most effort and backing behind their main brand? The answer is both of them are. It's just not the same. Microsoft is not that. Xbox doesn't matter to them the way it does to Sony, and it really matters to Sony. So you see Sony dropping the ball on, they've gotten weird with mobile, and they've gotten weird with their computer side division. Like, all that stuff has languished because PlayStation's their main focus. So none of this is surprising to me. I'm just disappointed because I thought maybe Microsoft would have come out all guns blazing, and instead they've really cut back on the guns. There's one really cool, nice, shiny gun, but there's no exclusive bullets for it. There's no bullets I can't get someplace else and get a reasonably equivalent experience. And to ask me for $500 and still not have any of those exclusives, I don't know where my motivation is. I mean, hell, I barely have a motivation for a PlayStation 4. I've still got my old 4 is cranking away just fine.
Oh, you really a Pro?
Yeah, Pro. I mean.
Yeah.
So I don't. So I don't even think Microsoft, or I don't even think Sony's made a very good argument for their version of this. It's just that where are the unique experiences at, and therefore also all my third-party experiences? And the answer is PlayStation 4, and then secondarily a Switch. The Switch is shaping up to be that second console once again, like it does, and it's really put Microsoft in a weird place. It's a funky place for them to be, and I don't want them there. And fanboys can yell at me all day about this. This is just the simple economics of it. I think it's just
I think we're going to get yelled at for this, and I often get yelled at. There is, for some reason, a rabid following of Microsoft in France, especially in the gaming, and people get really angry when I say things like this, but they got angry when, I said it when the console cycle started, and, that it's sometimes reality is reality. I know that concept has gotten more fuzzy in the past few years in the world, but in the past year maybe. But yeah, it is kind of disheartening to see all of this happen before our eyes, and I think it's especially disappointing because we thought, okay, now is the chance, now's the time to do something. And they didn't catch that opportunity. I think what we will agree on with the fanboys as well is the fact that the dynamic is not going to change. And some people will say, well, of course it wasn't going to change, but I wasn't convinced. I think there was a couple of moves that they could have done, and those moves were called, exclusive games that could have changed the dynamic, but they didn't, and it isn't. So, I also do want to mention, we're going to move on to Sony, but I do want to mention they didn't show any VR. I think it's going to come at some point, but I think they were really traumatized by the announcement from, the original Xbox One announcement. They didn't want to muddy the messaging. So they didn't want to say anything else than this is about the awesome games that you're going to be able to play.
Yeah, and they do. There was some comments later in an interview with, I forgot his name. The guy was on stage. The Microsoft guy, I always forget his name. I like him, but I can't remember his name. Anyway, Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer. He made some comments that the reason that there was no talk of VR, even though certainly that device is highly capable of it. You could even argue the regular Xbox One could do some things, but he said that their focus right now is on Windows rather than on Xbox One for VR development. I think what that probably means is if the demand rises for VR experiences, right now it's a little iffy when that'll happen. We're at a strange place in VR sort of time. There's no reason why they just wouldn't partner with Oculus or somebody.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
There's no, making a specific, the way that Samsung did with Oculus for Gear VR. It's like they'll have some sort of partnership. I don't think Microsoft wants to get, especially again, giving their brand position here. Why would they want to throw all their guts in developing a VR solution just to play keep up? They tried this with Kinect, which didn't really put them where they needed to be in terms of Nintendo Wii competition. Sony tried with Move, didn't really do it. Like sometimes you're chasing ghosts when you do that.
That's true.
And I don't blame them. I think this is actually a smart way to handle it. Let's see how things pan out. Sony's got some momentum that way, but I don't know.
I mean, they can do, once the headsets have been out, the cheaper ones, which don't need the totems, the sensor towers to function, they can put that on an Xbox One in a couple of months. So I think that's absolutely possible for them to. The
entire VR, listen, what you just described is when the entire VR world changes momentum and we see it move in a much more rapid pace. Right now, we're kind of at a weird place.
Yeah, so I don't fault them for not doing this at all. I think it was kind of smart even in this context. I do want to add one thing, though, about that conference. Like, as a whole, something I mentioned on Twitter as well. beyond the lack of exclusivity and the kind of disappointments that I got, we both got apparently from Microsoft. And again, it's not a sentiment that is shared by everyone. One thing that I think is factually accurate is the fact that this conference and the games that were shown weren't games that made you feel much. It was maybe some on an artistic level. The Last Night and Ori and the Will of the Wisp were kind of whimsical and transporting, but there weren't games that would make you feel emotions. It was so much focused on stabby and killy and explodey. It wasn't, and some of those are great, and I love that in some of my video games, but sometimes I want to be, addressed like an adult. I want to be talked to like someone who doesn't just want to stab zombies in the face or have a really big gun and shoot really big buildings. Yeah. And that I think
there was no emotional core to any of the games they showed. Well, I shouldn't say any. Some of them had little bits and stuff, but compared to Ubisoft was brimming with personality, passion, and excitement on those levels. And I also think, and I don't mean just the presentation, the games themselves were showing me those emotions, and so did the Sony conference.
And so did the Bethesda. Even The Evil Within 2 was kind of that. But Wolfenstein had a lot of that, relatable character moment things. And I understand, I'm not saying every game should be like that. But it feels like a miss if your entire platform doesn't really have that at all. Or, you're not showing it in your conference.
There was a sterility and a carefulness to it that I sense the entire time. And again, I don't even know that they're trying to do that. I just think that they're in a precarious position. And if you're asking corporate monster Microsoft to keep shoveling money after money into your, what Satya Nadella sees as a side project, it's going to start to show in things like this presentation.
I mean, they are in a difficult position. I think it would have taken a master stroke for them to do something that would have, as we said, reverse the dynamic. I'm not saying all of a sudden you start selling, 2 Xbox Ones for 1 PlayStation 4. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is starting to inverse the curve. And even that would have taken a master stroke. Because Sony is in such a dominant position that I think it's in Players, Gamblers, that movie with Matt Damon, where he says in poker, you need to chop off someone's leg and then you lean on them. So you do a big thing first and then you just lean on them. You don't need to keep swinging your sword. That metaphor really doesn't work in this context, but you just lean on them. So Sony doesn't have to do much. They just have to keep doing what they're doing and apply pressure in an even manner. So
no, it's the same. It's all Microsoft had to do during the Windows Mac wars of the 80s and 90s.
And all Microsoft had to do kind of during the early days of the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, which Microsoft dominated.
Yeah, and it's what Nintendo had to do when Sony came around with the PS1. Everyone's got to do it. Yeah. And this is Microsoft's turn to do it. Yeah, what's really the open question, and this is a topic for a whole nother show, so I won't spend real time on this, but the real question for me is, what is this moving forward? Because in the past, you could count on these 5 to 10 year cycles, whatever it was, let's say 8 years, and you would have these consoles during that time, and things would shake out, and whoever led, and that was pretty much the end of it, and you would wait for your next big try. This is different. We're doing these weird half steps. PS4 Pro, the Xbox One X, despite its leaps, is still kind of a half measure. When is the cycle done? Is that ever a thing again?
I think it will be. I think the problem is installed base, because with these half steps, as they're saying, it's premium products, it's upsell, it's something you can sell more expensive for the one that has money and that wants the best thing. But it doesn't establish a significant user base. So I think at some point you do need a break. And I think by, 2020, we're going to start hearing rumors about PS4 and PS5 and maybe even, if one does it, then they both have to do it. Of course, you're going to have backwards compatibility because now everyone has PC architecture. But I think they're going to say at some point, all right, this new machine is going to play the old games. The ones that come out for it, though, they're not going to be available on the other one because we want to have a significant leap, and we want developers to start using it and to establish a better user base. I think the half steps, the continuous generation is a cool idea, but I think in practice it doesn't work. It's not going to sell enough.
I think you're right. It feels different this time, and I don't know why. And maybe it will just pan out to be all right. PS5 now come, like we're going to get there. But I don't know what that time frame looks like. It's got to be a little different because you can't do these half steps and then a year later say, "Yo, here's a brand new console coming out."
I think we're going to start hearing about it, like rumors and stuff, in 2020. It's going to be a long cycle.
All right.
All right. Talking about Sony. Did you see that conference last year?
Yeah, it was the same.
Yeah, exactly. But it was awesome. I really liked it. So basically they showed Uncharted Lost Legacy, an expansion for Horizon Zero Dawn. They showed Days Gone, which looked really good, not as good as the previous scene, but it was a different thing. It was a little bit more stealthy, and it's still, if you're sick of zombie apocalypses, then you're not gonna like this. And but I'm not, and I thought it looked really good. Monster Hunter World, early 2018. I'm not gonna go over all of it. There was a bunch of stuff. Which ones did you really like?
All right, so Days Gone, I just want to say one quick thing. I said it during the show. I'll say it again. I think it looks like Pikmin for old people. The way that you control a mob of monsters or zombies was very interesting to me. I don't know if that's a one-off or if that's indicative of the gameplay throughout, but super intrigued. The big jump out for me was probably... Oh, man. This is hard.
Okay, we have to mention Shadow of the Colossus Remaster.
Yeah.
Before you go to the big things.
Yeah, that was a shock. That's surprised the hell out of me. Did you know that was coming? I mean, any idea that
no one knew.
That?
No one knew.
That was nuts.
And it didn't look like it looked like a PS4 game, which I think is not. It's not just a adaptation to putting it on the platform as it was. It looked stunning.
Well, it looked really impressive. I for a minute thought, a true sequel to the Colossus game, but no, it appears to be a remastering, but also clearly we've got new textures and detail and lighting. I mean, everything looks new. It looks really
I think it's going to give an opportunity to a lot of people to, give it a try, because not a lot of people tried the original one. Marvel versus Capcom Infinite, there was a story demo. There's a story demo available now. I downloaded it, haven't had time to play it, but it's campy and weird, and it's gonna be fun.
Can I just make it clear to the world that we have to all agree on? If we have so many disagreements in this world, can we all at least agree that when anatomically correct looking humans and metahumans are standing next to what is supposed to be Mega Man, that it looks dumb? It looks so dumb. I mean, I'm sure that game's going to be great.
Yes,
but does. Mega Man never fits among those people. He just looks ridiculous. Anyway.
Well, it's not like MODOK fit in, anywhere.
No, MODOK doesn't fit anywhere, literally. Well, he barely fits in his own little thing.
Yeah, armor thing.
It's awful.
Call of Duty World War II. November 3rd.
I was going to say, wow, we haven't had a 3 yet. That sounds good.
Well, we kind of did. But yeah, okay.
That's a big get, although I don't know how much cachet it has anymore, but you have to count it as a pretty big get for Sony to have that presented there and not at Microsoft. I think Microsoft could have benefited from that.
Yeah, it's been the case for, that's the kind of thing I could have expected, like Microsoft to pay for exclusives or, not just launch exclusive timing, but like exclusive content or for those big games. But anyway, there were a number of things announced also before the Sony conference. The Sony conference itself was super tight, barely an hour. But there was also Gran Turismo Sport is coming this fall to PlayStation 4. Super Hot VR is coming to PSVR. Matterfall is a weird game by the developers of what's the thing, the launch title for PS4, the shooter.
Resogun, thank you. Yeah.
And that's a weird, I mean, we're not going to go over those like Knack 2, Ni no Kuni 2. There were a number of things. And Playlink, which is kind of that Jackbox phone game, but on PlayStation, apparently it's a thing. They announced 60 million consoles sold and 487 games sold. Good on them. But the one thing that was a little bit surprising was they did spend time on VR. They showed Skyrim VR, which was kind of intriguing. Star Child, which is weird and looked really nice. The Impatient, a fishing game in Final Fantasy 15, really. Bravo Team and Moss, which is that weird thing with a mouse that you're manipulating the environment to help traverse. I mean, none of this is going to light the world on fire, but I think it's significant that they did spend time talking about VR with some games that are going to be interesting.
Yeah, they will surprise no one that the Vita was never mentioned, but
I think it was. There was what game is coming to the Vita? There was one game coming to the Vita.
Did I miss that? I thought I never saw the Vita even talked about.
Well, not on stage. You're right. I think it wasn't on stage, but
yeah. But Bad Breath Barry comes out for Sony, and he I assume he has bad breath. I don't know, but he talks for a hot second. Then they show a ton of trailers. Comes out, talks for a hot second, ton of trailers. It kind of rinses and repeats. That's their presentation style, and I like it. Again, it's like last year's, but the VR fishing thing, the fact that that's all we got out of Square. What is this world we live in where a Sony presentation doesn't have 50 Square announcements? Like that kind of blew my mind. The lack of information about a proper Square title or follow up to Final Fantasy's last game or something. That was just weird to me.
I mean, even beyond that, we didn't have like a lot for 2017 on the Sony conference. There were, I mean, the expansion, the Lost Legacy and Horizon thing, and then, you know, the big games like, you know, Call of Duty and the cross-platform stuff is going to be on PlayStation as well. So the many people who already have one are going to have stuff to do for the end of the year. But the exclusive stuff is coming 2018, so that's worth mentioning as well.
Yeah, God of War.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Look, oh my gosh, dude, I'm so excited for what I'm calling the maturation of God of War. It isn't just Kratos go kill stuff, have naked booby sex, and then go do it again. Like that's not what this is. This is like a heartfelt story of I don't know what, ultimately redemption or correction or something, but it's him and his son traveling through the Norse mythology, not Greek. We're done with that. He's killed all the Greek ones. They're dead.
Well, there aren't any gods or titans to kill.
So now it's on the Norse stuff, which is super exciting for me because I love Norse mythology. I love that whole thing. So a lot of snowy vistas and this sort of stuff, but it looks really, really, really good. And I'm bummed that we're not going to get it until early 2018, but I'm thrilled that thing's coming along, and they showed quite a bit of that, so it looked really good. Would you come away with God of War? I mean, that one's got a lot of visual punch, so it's easy to get drawn into that, but I felt like we got a lot more look at actual combat, at actual traversal stuff, at story moments and beats, not just here's Kratos, he's a badass, he has a beard, and there's a kid for some reason. It seemed like a lot more this time.
Yeah, I mean, I need to correct something. Days Gone is December 29, 2017. So technically 2017.
All right, cool.
I think that's the date. It's the one on Wikipedia, so it might have been delayed, but that's what I have here. So, yeah, God of War, I mean, yes, it is action-y thing, but first of all, the action part seemed really different. Like, it seems like the gameplay, you remember, God of War, it was kind of often a little bit far away from the character, or it felt like you weren't, it wasn't as visceral as what we've seen here. Here it felt like they've evolved the gameplay into something. You don't have the Chains of Olympus anymore. Maybe you get something equivalent at some point, but you use that weird axe that you can throw away, and that acts like Mjolnir, Thor's hammer that comes back to him, and they could have used Mjolnir probably. It's Norse mythology. It really feels like they were copying that. But it feels different enough that it's not like Call of Duty or Gears of War, where the new ones always feel like the old ones. This feels like a clean break from the previous, semi-clean break. It's still God of War, but even on the gameplay parts, it feels different enough that I think it's going to provide me with the same adrenaline, but maybe in a slightly different package. But beyond that,
also, I feel like we're checking in with Kratos 20 years later.
So that's what I was going to. That's what I was going to get to. It's beyond that, the storytelling part, and we were talking about emotions earlier. Like, you just need 3 phrases to. He's alone in a boat with his son, who's very young, maybe 10 or 11, something like that. And Kratos is gruff, and he's like angry, and he's mean, and all of this. And the son tells him something along the lines of, you think I'm weak because I'm not like you, but I'm not weak, or, something along those lines. And it conveys something,
Yep. Taps right into stuff. It's universal. People get it immediately. And it's a God of War game. They're not known for their emotional swagger at all.
And I think that's why, I understand it speaks to me as well. My jam is narrative, action, cinematic games. So of course this is going to speak to me. But still, I feel like there is work, progression, effort put in these kind of things that isn't being put in some awesome looking, sports cars racing game. Or that's an unfair comparison, but we've mentioned it a few times, or in things like Halo, Gears of War, which is just rehashing the exact same formula. And I hope that next time we hear about Halo with Halo 6, that they have learned from this and that they're doing something other than just aliens. Oh, look, Master Chief. It's okay, guys. Everything's going to be good. Master Chief is here to shoot lasers.
Yeah. And time to evolve that series. No question about it.
Yeah. So anyway, yes, God of War, I'm 100% in. Detroit Become Human, I wasn't, it felt a little bit too actiony, but maybe, we saw some less actiony parts, so maybe they wanted to show that there's stuff to do as well. Exclusive parts in Destiny 2, but of course, the end of the conference was, to me, I think the highlight of the entire show. The entire E3, possibly.
I'm pretty close to agreeing. I think probably, if you put a gun to my head, I think I'm picking this. That Spider-Man demo made me squeal like a baby. It was amazing.
So that game is heavily inspired by Arkham, by the Batman Arkham series. It's basically Arkham with a web slinger instead of the Dark Knight.
And the sun's out a lot.
The sun's out a lot, and there are some, Uncharted inspired moments where he's running and going like, no, and jumping around and web slinging, and like the fight combat system is Arkham 100%.
Totally. The web tech though needs to be mentioned here. So even in the moments where the combat feels very Arkham, the webs are used in such a way for takedowns and for blocks and things that are very unique and very, very fun. Everything about
very satisfying.
Yeah, finally a Spider-Man game where the webs aren't just your traversal method or a way of, in a boss fight, stick in the floor or something. Like these, it looks like the webs are going to be your character in a way. It's like so much going on with webs, and the technology's right for that. It looked really, really nice. I'm not even that big of a Spider-Man fan, but everything about it looked great. Really, really, really stoked. And again, some emotion conveyed in there. I'm not sure how, but they kind of did. They've got the character right. This character is in the middle of one of the worst fights in the city and is still managing somehow to save people.
Absolutely. That, like, the running around trying to prevent all of these, like, cranes and helicopters to fall on people. And that's what he's trying to do. That is Spider-Man. And that they've captured the character in a way that is kind of unusual for these kinds of, the video game versions of superheroes aren't usually great. Arkham did it really well, and it seems like this one might be the next one.
I think it's Marvel's Arkham, like, for real. The only difference here is that Marvel's not actually doing much with it since it's a Sony property. That makes this an exclusive. This will show up nowhere but PlayStation 4 platforms. But
2018, by the way.
Yeah, early 2018, I think. I hope. Did it say early, or maybe it's fall? Who knows?
No, I don't think so.
But that game has the capability of doing for Spider-Man what Arkham did for Batman. And it isn't just that it made a good Batman movie. It also didn't have to be tied to a movie. Came out independently from all of that. And Arkham was like, yo, here's a unique take on Batman with these kinds of focuses. And that turned out to be one of the greatest franchises in superhero game history. Spider-Man could do the same thing here. Does not need to be tied to a movie. Goes and just tells its own story, does its own mechanics. This is Insomniac Games. They know how to make video games, like, for real. So I couldn't be more bullish on Spider-Man. It looked incredible to me.
Yeah, I'm as everyone understands, I am in agreement. Fun Easter egg at the end of the presentation of the demo. It was about 10 minutes. It was Peter Parker Spider-Man, but at the end you have a young Miles Morales watching the helicopter being caught in the web, and he turns around and he runs off. It's like a 2 seconds thing, but you have Miles Morales in the game as well, so that's gonna be.
That's huge fan service. That didn't even occur to me when I saw it. I just thought, oh, that's a weird transition, and then it hit me later. I was like, oh, that's who that is. Yeah. So they're really going in, and there's no reason not to. And please do learn the lessons of Arkham, because there's some great things that happen because of that game, and there's no reason we couldn't see. I mean, hell, some of my favorite games in the last few years have all been Arkham inspired. Like the Mordor games are straight up out of that. The only thing that would make this Spider-Man game any cooler is if it somehow had the Nemesis system in it. But I'm all for them. They should all share their ideas, man. Let's make better video games by iteration. I have no problem with it.
Just to mention one thing about the Arkham fight system, the reason why it's so good is that it connects one punch or one strike or one attack with an opponent. It's hard to articulate exactly why it feels good, but I think that's the reason. In most games, you swing your giant sword, and anything that is caught in that area is going to get hit and thrown to the side or whatever. The Arkham system, the genius of that thing, the thing that makes it so cinematic and engaging, is that one button connects one hit with an enemy. So it feels more visceral and engaging, and I'm very happy they're bringing it to Spider-Man.
Yeah, it looks great. The way he whipped around these guys with his webs in their neck and
the traversal.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. So this bears mentioning because John brought it up, and I think it's an important point. In the old Spider-Man games, and there were some good ones. Spider-Man 2 for the PS2 was amazing. But when you would traverse through the city, you would sort of shoot your webs up into some invisible crane in the sky that you couldn't see. And that was fine. It got you where you wanted to go. And there's still a great feeling about zipping through the city. This had a small detail, but one I appreciated. I think we all appreciated, where the webs were sticking to sides of buildings. Like you had to, you weren't just shooting it up into something that just held you up there for gameplay reasons. Like you're using the city as your mode of transportation, and not just swinging, like sliding across the side of a skyscraper or running up the side of one after a good swing toward it or whatever. That stuff looked real impressive to me.
Yeah. I think the quality of Arkham was that it made you feel like you were the Batman. And, I think that was even their tagline for the third or fourth one. It was like, be the Batman. And this is going to make you feel like you're Spider-Man.
Yeah, which is what you want out of those games. Exactly. That you want to feel like you are the web slinger and you are doing your deal, and it doesn't feel like some crap movie tie-in. That's what I don't want, and I don't think that's what this is. I think it looks like they're going to the core of the comic and making everybody happy. I can't wait.
All right. Last conference that happened earlier today, very short. The Nintendo show something, which was, really short and not a huge amount, but still some things. Some things in the sense that they announced they're working on stuff. The biggest were Pokemon RPG and Metroid Prime 4 are in development for the Switch, but they didn't even have anything to show. It was basically just a title card or a mention.
Which, I mean, I would like more, obviously, but I'm happy to hear that those are in the works. I think Metroid, the Prime games deserve another look. I think a 2D Metroid game would be great, although they did show that on 3DS. So that's a thing people can look forward to. But I mean, of course, Pokemon, damn straight. The only thing I'm really bummed about with any of this, and I didn't get to see it because I was doing another show, but no Animal Crossing. Are you freaking kidding me? Are you trying to destroy my soul here? Because I love those games and I would kill for one on there. But,
well, they still have to keep stuff for later. I mean, they're what they have under their in their bag to put out next year is Animal Crossing and Smash Brothers.
That's true. Plus, their Animal Crossing. There is,
there are a number of things, but
and there's an Animal Crossing mobile game in the works, and I don't even know what that is yet. So maybe that's where they're putting their money for that. Who knows?
Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is going to be coming end of the year in the fall. Possibly the worst VO work ever. It was terrible. It was like cringeworthy. It was so bad. It's so bad. It's worth going to check it out just for that. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on Switch. Kirby Switch and Yoshi Switch are coming next year. Classics, but still cool. I mean, obviously cool. Fire Emblem Warriors, possibly the second worst VO work ever. Also coming in the fall of 2017. Zelda, they showed a little bit of the Master Trials and the Champion's Ballad expansion packs. Looked cool. They made a number of the invitational esports events they had for Splatoon and Pokken Tournament, and also a thing around ARMS. They showed again Mario and Rabbids. It's coming out August 29, so the end of the summer. There's Rocket League coming to the Switch. It's going to be cross-platform for the platforms that agree to doing cross-platform. There's going to be some Mario items. And the one big thing, talking about Mario, there was a number of things shown for Super Mario Odyssey. You haven't seen that, right?
No, I want to. I understand that the hat can control everything from other Mario-sized people to like straight up dinosaurs.
It is weird, and I'm not sure I like it from a visual standpoint like this. The art style is still strange, having Mario in like somewhat realistic places, inspired fantasy places. But mechanics wise, it looks really interesting. Basically, with the hat, you can throw the hat at stuff and then they called it capture the enemies. And so you become that enemy for a certain amount of time. You can even transform into electricity and travel along electric lines. He has like tons of different appearances, and there's weird moments where you have like 2D Mario portions of a level in a wall in the environment that you can go to and integrate and traverse as a 2D Mario, moment in the game. Kind of like the Zelda thing on 3DS, the paper Zelda moments. But overall, the game feels very much like an open world. It feels sandboxy. It's going to be out October 27, by the way, so it's not the end of the year. It's coming in the fall-ish. But yeah, it feels... I'm very intrigued because of the reasons why you're intrigued by a Mario game, which is gameplay and the way a 3D Mario game explores the environment and does kind of platforming in a free 3D open world. The way the hat works, the way you interact with the environment, it's all very different. I think that's what I take away from what they showed at the show, and then for, I don't know, half an hour of treehouse footage. It is different. They are taking a significant risk or chance with Mario, maybe in the same way that they did with Zelda. And I was not sold on Zelda when they showed all of these gameplay moments. So I'm gonna learn my lesson and not be too worried about. Not even worried. I mean, it looks okay, but I'm not sure it's gonna be great. But it could be, if it does half of what Zelda did, it's gonna be incredible. And it seems like they're not choosing to do the same thing again. I would have loved to have a 3D Mario game like Mario 3D World. I've said many times how much I love that game. But this is taking a risk, and I like it for that.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, that's when they've done their biggest innovating. N64's Mario 64 was a huge risk. It was the jump to 3D nobody thought was possible. And if you get back in the mindset of the mid 90s, you realize what a risk that was. Then you look at Galaxy as another example. That game took all kinds of crazy risks, and it's an amazing game. Both those games are incredible. So when they do I get excited, even though it's a little weird. I mean, I'm looking at video now. There's a full-grown male man walking around with a Mario hat on.
That's Mario. You capture that man, and you become him, and you move around as him. It's really weird. It's super weird,
but I trust in them to the point that I think they're going to pull off whatever this weirdness is.
Yeah.
So yeah, a genuine excitement from me on this front. I think it's going to be awesome, and it's not that far off. Like, it's weird. Some of the biggest games of this year are going to be Nintendo games, despite the fact that the Switch is being criticized for not having a ton of games. Yeah.
Well, I mean, by the end of the year, you're going to have Mario. It's that we can talk about this for just a second before we close the show. By October 27, if Mario is not a disaster, which I don't think it's going to be, what I mean is, even if it's not as mind-blowing as Zelda was for that series, even if it's just a good Mario game, then the Switch is, as we've mentioned a few times, a completely valid purchase. And there's enough other stuff around that makes it a preferred second console. Or it doesn't matter if it's your first or second. It's a great console to buy, which a year ago I would not have thought I would be saying.
No, I can't believe how it's the turnaround that no one expected. And I'm thrilled about it because Nintendo makes games I can't get anywhere else. And where else am I going to get them but Nintendo? So bring it on.
Yeah, I think the lesson of all of this is don't forget about first party. It is. That's what makes or breaks a console, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the Switch's case, it's everything. Like, it's straight up everything.
Of course.
They've earned that. And you could argue Sony over the last 5, 6, 7 years has earned that because they've spent a lot of time and investment over the years building up what is now a great stable of new and current content that is exclusive. Whereas Microsoft kind of hung everything on Halo and Gears, and now they don't have anything. Like, they've canceled it, and that's weird. That's weird if you're trying to compete with two other companies that have this much stuff in their pocket at any given time, where they can just make a Metroid game and blow our minds.
All right. I think that is a good amount of discussion about E3 2017. Obviously, we could keep talking about a number of things for a long time, and there are games we didn't mention. There are some aspects of some games that we didn't talk about. We could talk about for much longer. I'm sure some of you guys are going to think it's criminal that we didn't talk about this or that, but we're already almost 2 hours in, so I hope you will be okay with us stopping here. Before we do, though, so Scott, do you want to close it off? Because it is kind of, Pixels and Boob together. So
yeah, it's a joint show. It's like a marijuana cigarette wrapped tightly around two people. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, hey, So first of all, I think a pretty solid E3 where it's very focused on games this time. I like when years are like that. Despite the Microsoft hardware announcement, this isn't a conference that's overwhelmed with gadgets or gimmicks or VR or any of those things. We're more focused on what am I playing and when will I be playing it. And that means a lot to me. So as far as our coverage goes, that's maybe been my favorite thing about this. In terms of more content and more stuff, everybody, make sure you check out the Boop feed. We'll have a show this weekend, likely myself and Brian, which will be a little more E3 in there, but also some other stuff unrelated to that. I'm going to talk more about why I think I'm obsessed with the ESO right now. I have a theory. So we'll get to that this weekend. And that's over at frogpants.com/boop. And of course, everything you need from Patrick right over there at frenchspin.com. They should be doing that now. That's not just this show. There's other shows, right?
Absolutely. You can check out the Phyllis Club, which is a show where we talk about serious stuff. Yes, we do. And we talk about it with people who disagree with us, but we're still remaining civil. It's possible. Go check it out. And of course, go check me out on Twitter and on Facebook. I'm not Patrick on both of those platforms. I hope you had a good time with us. We certainly did have a good time together. And we'll be on each other's shows, of course, throughout the year. And we'll be back with another Booxel next year, but that's far off. It will be 2018.
Yeah, it's going to be a ways off, but I love it. It's a tradition. Fourth year.
It is now a tradition.
Yep. By then, we'll be playing all these 2018 things.
Almost all of them. Well, we'll have lots of gaming things to talk about before then, and we'll hope you'll join us on Pixels and on the Boop Show to talk about all of that. Until then, I hope you all have a wonderful day, week, and summer, and I'll give it to Scott to conclude the show.
I will also say that you should have all those good things and more.
Goodbye, everyone.
Everybody.